Can teaching yoga pay the bills? Can you actually make a full-time living, your whole income, just from teaching yoga? The good news is that the answer is yes, but it's a yes but. Yes with caveats, and I'm going to unpack all of them in this video. If you're meeting me for the first time, I'm Emily. I've been teaching yoga since 2018, and for a big chunk of that time, it has been my full-time job. So I can categorically say yes, it is possible, but it's taken quite a bit of learning and lots of mistakes to get to this place where it is my full-time source of income. And the biggest caveat that I'm going to give you straight away is you will never make your millions from teaching yoga. It's not going to be a super lucrative career choice. But if you live quite modestly, if you don't need a huge income every month, if you're not bothered about going on fancy holidays all the time or buying new cars, or, if your financial situation is quite modest, then yeah, you can absolutely make a living teaching yoga. But something I'm going to ask you to consider in this video is that what you actually want? There are some quite big sacrifices that have to come with making this your choice, your lifestyle, teaching yoga as a living. Quick story time of how I got to where I am now. 2017, I enrolled in a yoga teacher training course. 2018, I qualified. I was working an office job full-time while doing that training course. And I continued to work in that office job for another 1.5 years once I started setting up yoga classes. So 2018, as soon as I qualified, as quickly as I could, I set up some classes of my own. I hired a kind of bar, restaurant kind of place in town that has an upstairs events room. They gave me quite a good deal because I wanted it on a Tuesday evening when they didn't really have many events on. It had space for maybe 15, 16 yoga mats at a push. It wasn't ideal, but it worked. I gave the first class free, which I continued doing for most of the first year of my teaching. So it wasn't free for everyone. It was just your first class with me was free, and then afterwards you would pay. And because I was newly qualified, I dropped the rate enormously. So I charged, I think, £5 per class and I wanted to be really honest with people and say, I'm newly qualified, I'm really wanting to get some experience, so this is the rate for now, but at some point it will go up. And that seemed to really resonate with people. I think my honesty about it and people wanted to kind of help me out and help me to build up my experience with teaching yoga while also getting a class at a bit of a bargain. So for the first year or so, that's what I was doing. I was mostly teaching in the evenings. That was when I was free and when most people wanted classes. I then gradually built up, adding on a few little extra things here and there. I basically said yes to any opportunity that came along, and I would recommend the same if you're in the same boat. If you're newly qualified, say yes to every opportunity. For me, it took about 18 months to 2 years of doing that alongside my office job before I was at a place where I felt pretty confident that I could quit the job and make yoga my full-time business. And that was a bit of a scary choice. My first month of being fully self-employed was January 2020. I was so excited about the idea of making my own schedule, being my own boss. Felt really, really liberating. The classes I was teaching were going really well. I think at that time I was teaching somewhere between 12 to 15 hours of yoga a week. And that was enough for me at that time to pay my mortgage, to pay my bills, to kind of cover everything. January went really well, February went really well, and then March 2020 arrived and the whole world stopped because of COVID. Everything went online. I did some Zoom classes and my income dropped enormously. To cut a long story short, during that next year or so where we were in and out of lockdowns, I ran classes when I could, but I also went back to my office job and luckily was able to go back and do a little bit of work remotely for them. And it probably wasn't until about 2022 or 2023 that I was back to full-time just teaching yoga. It took quite a while to rebuild that business and get back to a place of stability. So for the last few years since then, I have been teaching yoga full-time. It's been my only source of income, and for the most part, it's been wonderful. And I feel really, really lucky and grateful that I've kind of carved out a lifestyle where this works for me. But here are the sacrifices, and this is the less glamorous side of making yoga your full-time job. I've already mentioned one, which is having a modest lifestyle in terms of how much you spend. So I don't go on big holidays, I don't spend a lot on myself, and that just works for me. That aligns with what I love about yoga, this sort of non-greed, non-attachment, non-hoarding. It doesn't feel important to me personally to have lots of stuff. The other quite big sacrifice that's really important to consider is how much you're willing to give up evenings and weekends. These sort of antisocial working hours. Most people can only come to class after work, or at the weekend. And particularly if you want to also run any kind of retreats or events or workshops, they are going to have to be weekends, really. So if that's not something that you're willing to sacrifice, then this might not be a job that you want to do full time. And so I suppose the big thing that I want to impose upon you in this video is, should you try and make yoga your full-time job? Or actually, would it be a better choice for you? And this is going to be really individual, one person to the next. Would the better choice be to have something else that is another form of income, another job that is maybe a bit more sociable hours or pays a little bit better, and then to enjoy teaching yoga on the side? Because the third big sacrifice, I suppose, is if you are teaching yoga regularly, if you're teaching multiple classes a week, it does have an impact on how much you're able to practice yoga yourself and how much you're able to enjoy your personal yoga practice. And the really tricky kind of catch-22 thing is, the more yoga classes you're teaching, the less yoga you're probably going to be practicing yourself in terms of the full range of what yoga is, the full spiritual practice. And then as your own personal practice kind of gets smaller and diminishes, what you're teaching in your classes is going to become less and less authentic in terms of the true practice of yoga. So it's really tricky to find the balance where you're able to teach enough to pay the bills, but also to make space for your own practice, to make sure that you're still really honouring what yoga is. I'm not saying all this to discourage you. I actually personally think that teaching yoga as my full-time job is one of the best choices I've ever made for myself. It works for me, it's fit into my life really wonderfully. But I recognise, and I work with other yoga teachers, I run a yoga teacher training course, so I recognise that everyone's situation is different. And it's not going to be suitable for everyone. And even as I'm making this video, I am currently quite heavily pregnant and have my first baby on the way. So my whole life situation is going to be incredibly different in terms of finances, in terms of how much time I can commit to teaching yoga. So who knows what is going to happen in my personal yoga business going forward. Final pieces of advice to you. First thing is, spend some time meditating, sitting with the idea of what works in your lifestyle. Why do you want to make yoga your full-time job if you do? Would it be more suitable to build up to it gradually, to have it as a part-time thing and see how you go? Are you going to be able to maintain your own love and passion for yoga if you make it your job? These are all things to consider. If you've decided that you do still really want to do this and you want to make it work, you've got to go into it and treat it as a business from day one. Make sure you're being really sensible about your choices of how much you're spending on venues, how much you're charging for the classes, and give it time. Give yourself at least a year or two of having another job, another more steady and stable source of income, so that you can gradually build up your community, gradually build up your business, and see where it takes you. Say yes to as many things as you can initially, and then fine tune it further down the line and see, is this class that I'm teaching that takes me an hour to get to and only pays, pennies, is it worth my time? Is it worth my energy? Or do I need to say goodbye to that class and see what else is happening over here? It's going to be a process of back and forth, up and down, lots of lessons learned along the way, until you find a place where you are steadily earning enough money to make yoga as much of your job as you want it to be. Be kind to yourself in the journey. It's a tricky one. It's very hard to manage money with yoga, but there is a place, I believe, for making this a lifestyle where it does pay the bills and it allows you to dedicate more and more of your time to learning about yoga, to living yoga, living and breathing it, so that what you're teaching can become even more honest, authentic, and connect with people in a very real way. I'd love to hear what you think about this, and if you have questions, leave them in the comments below. I will read them, I'll get back to you. You might disagree with me on some of the stuff I've said in this video, and to reiterate, I'm really not saying any of this negative stuff to put you off. I just want you to have your eyes wide open to what the reality of teaching yoga is. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, please remember to like, subscribe, all of that stuff is really, really valuable, and I'll see you in another video soon. Thank you.